Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Psychology Foundation of Canada webinar. We're glad you can join us today. Today, we are very grateful to have Jan Blaxall return, and she's speaking to us about ensuring the essential emotional needs of young children in high-stress times. And today, Jan will be focusing specifically on connecting and protecting through play, movement, the arts, and nature. So we're so happy to have Jan return. And before I introduce you to Jan, I just wanted to let you know of a couple of things. We are recording. We often get that question. So the recording will be available to you on our website, and it will also be sent to you in the next couple of days. The format for the presentation is about 45 minutes, and we'll have about 15 minutes at the end for your questions. So please start to put in your questions throughout the webinar. I'll pop back on at the end and help to moderate. So we welcome all of your questions, and whatever we can't get to, we'll do our very best to return to you at a later date. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, I'd ask that you please email my colleague, Pamela Sarianis at psychologyfoundation.org. And I have received a lot of questions around certificates, and I appreciate that many people are taking these webinars for professional development. Unfortunately, we are such a small organization that at this time we are unable to provide certificates. That might change in the future, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with that, and I apologize for any miscommunication. So who are we? The Psychology Foundation of Canada, we've been around for about 45 years, and our vision is Canada where every child achieves their optimal mental health. And we do this through the use of psychological science. We ensure that key adult caregivers in a child's life have the tools and resources to support and promote child's mental well-being. And we have researched our programs. They are evidence-informed and evidence-based, and we have had the privilege of being able to deliver this content to communities all across the country. And so we appreciate your support in continuing to nurture resilience in young people's lives. We have a whole suite of programs that run across the developmental stages. From birth, we have a program called Make the Connection. This is a program where we are encouraging secure attachment between caregivers, parents, and their babies up to the age of 3 years old. We have an e-learning module that I'll share a little bit about later. We move on into the school years with Kids Have Stress Too and Stress Lessons. These are programs that really focus on equipping young people with the kinds of tools and strategies they need to manage life stresses. We're all going to experience stress in our lives, but it's a matter of how we deal with it. So these are programs that we are often partnering with school boards, educators, social workers, early childhood educators to deliver to kids in their environments. And finally, we move up through to adult, young adult, and into adults with a program called Stress Strategies. And this is a decision-making program where you can input a challenge that you might be facing, and it'll help to problem solve. You'll be able to download your action plan and be able to implement it. So I'd encourage you to visit stressstrategies.ca for more information on that. This is the e-learning module I was mentioning, Make the Connection 0 to 3. We have managed to design this in association with some really skilled partners. This is about an hour-long module that you can do in the comfort of your own home. Its focus is on helping young people, kids, develop that secure attachment, and it's very much activities-based. So the program does come with a facilitator's guide, and you can find all that information on our website. And before I introduce Jan, or maybe reintroduce, we'd like to know a little bit about you. So can you let us know, I'm going to launch a poll, in what capacity are you joining us today? So are you a professional that works with children? Are you a parent? Maybe you're both. So if you could just let us know, it'll give us a chance to get a sense of who's in the room with us. And just while we're waiting, I will say that we have been busy at the Psychology Foundation of Canada at adapting our training programs to be in an online format. So if you'd like more information on that, I'd encourage you to visit our website as well. So we'll see the results. Mostly we've got professionals that work with children. So I appreciate that many people do take these webinars as a professional development opportunity. Just one more poll where we'd like to see maybe you're returning. Did you attend yesterday's webinar, or perhaps you're brand new to the content, and this will help Jan to be able to tailor her presentation. So looks like we have majority of people are returning. So welcome back. Thanks for coming back. And now I'll introduce Jan. So Jan, thank you again for coming back and joining us. You've been a good friend to the Psychology Foundation of Canada. Jan has taught early childhood education courses at Fanshawe College in London and Conestoga College in Kitchener for 30 years. She began her career as a psychometrist and play therapist with a preschool diagnostic program in Child and Family Center. Her areas of teaching and expertise include emotional development, infant toddler care, education, and trauma. And now Jan provides professional learning and mentoring to ECEs and other professionals working with children. She offers consultation and professional development sessions to ECEs and childcare centers. Online learning modules and webinars are provided through the Early Years Professional Development Center, Dominion Learning Institute of Canada, where she is the Director of Program Development. Jan is the co-author of an ECE textbook, Children at the Center, Principles of Early Childhood Education in Canada, and has contributed articles to the Canadian Childcare Federation's journal Interaction, and was an editor and contributor for the Ideas Journal of Emotional Wellbeing. Jan is a trainer for Kids Have Stress Too, which is a Psychology Foundation of Canada program, Second Step programs, and Music Together, which support early emotional and social development. So I will now turn it on over to you, Jan. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to say we're much more hopeful that we've got the sound together, the audio a little bit more consistent, and apologies for that yesterday. And I'm so pleased that you decided to come back. And for those who are coming for the first time, just a real quick review of what we did yesterday was to really kind of focus on why it takes a calm adult to support a child in maintaining their own sense of calm. And so now what we're going to do is just talk really about the value of play for children's sense of calm, especially when the environment is a little bit unfamiliar and the daily routines are not so routine. But play is familiar to children and it's so valuable. And so, oh, still having issues with hearing. Okay, so the play is so valuable. The four things I wanted to say, sorry, I got a little distracted there. Why is the play so valuable? What kind of environments do we need for play? Playful experiences that are essential for emotional development, and roles for adults in children's play. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I love this quote. Play is the universal language of children, of childhood. It's through play that children understand each other and make sense of the world around them. And this comes from Scotland, where they are so committed to supporting children's play that they have an organization that sets up community play spaces for children. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is not going to surprise any of you who are ECEs and probably not parents either. There are really important emotional benefits of play. This is a safe place for children to express their emotions. Play is a release opportunity for stress, can get some of that stress that they're holding in their brains and their bodies out. Children can manipulate reality through play. They can change things from how they seem to how they would like them to be. And for a parent or an educator who's participating in that play, then really you can get to understand what the child might be struggling with or dealing with. Play is an opportunity to express oneself freely without any pressure to succeed. There's no pass-fail for play, and there's no required product that has to be produced. Play is the child's time, the child's experience. And play is an amazing opportunity to support a child developing some problem-solving skills, because they can do it at a distance from themselves. They can do it through a character. They can do it for little things that are not really big upsets and get the practice in those skills. Okay, next slide. This is another quote. Through its rich use of symbol and story, play allows children to give voice to their experiences. And this is really important. Some people believe that actually play is a precursor to literacy, because children are telling stories in their play. And this is a precursor to being able to tell stories in words, to write down stories, and to communicate in a more higher level way. Play is a safe place to put your confusing and painful feelings. And play is a pathway to healing and mastery. And for sure, for children who are really struggling, play therapy is an amazing intervention. But for every child, play is therapeutic, just because of these reasons, that it's a place to deal with whatever's going on and hopefully to find some problem-solving solutions. Next slide. Okay, what environments are there for play? Anywhere can be an environment for play. Different kinds of play are suitable to different kinds of environments. If you're in the car, for example, or if you're in a transition where you have no flexibility to go somewhere, your play has to be more verbal, more musical, but you can still play. Anywhere that's safe to play without undue risk of harm to self or others. And you'll notice that I didn't say without any risk of harm to self or others, because real play involves managed risk. But we have to be there to supervise always to make sure that the risk doesn't ever escalate. And we want children to have places to play where they don't have to worry about damaging the surroundings around them. And I learned this in play therapy. It's kind of a funny story, but I was doing some training on play therapy, and someone asked the presenter, what do I do about a child who keeps pulling my tie when we're in therapy? And the presenter said, take your tie off so that there is no tie, so that the child and you don't have to get in conflict over that. And I think that that's really something that is so important for ECEs and for parents, is to think about that. Where can the child play freely without having to constantly worry about making a mess? Okay, so different types of play suitable for different environments. Let's move on the next slide. Okay, so there is true value in messy play, and kids need somewhere that they can get messy. And it can be the mess of a whole bunch of toys that have been played with and then tossed aside. And yes, at some point they have to be put away and resorted and reorganized for the next session's play. This is goop being played with in my kitchen by my granddaughter. And it's very messy, as you know, but totally, totally enjoyable, beneficial, and consumes a lot of time. Rough and tumble play. There's lots of evidence to show how important rough and tumble play, again, in a safe place and in a safe way, and nonsense play, just plain being silly. Next slide. I believe that we are so privileged if a child invites us into their world to play. Yep, thank you. And I spent a lot of time on the internet looking for pictures that could express this. And then I saw this one and it's like, yes, this is how we play with children. We wait for an invitation, and then as if we were going into someone else's house, we accept that invitation and join into their world. And that world is just so incredibly amazing. Next slide. Okay, and essential aspects of play. Every child has strong preferences for different types of play, but there are common things about play that are present in experiences that lead to a child having a calm brain and an engaged brain. And that's the Kids Have Stress 2 stoplight. And basically, we talked yesterday about, and I think I might have a slide coming up, so I won't say too much about, yep, there it is. Play is that opportunity to work on the skills that we need to deal with stress. You have to stop when play gets too hectic. You can feel frustrated or you can feel excited. You can think about why you feel that way. You can plan a different way to build that tower if it keeps falling down. And then you can act. Green is good to go when your brain is calm, when you've got a plan. And this is such an amazing opportunity for children to practice stress management and self-regulation. Next slide. Okay, so what's essential about play? Often it's spontaneous. It may be very simple, or at least start out simple. And it's flexible. It moves with the child's experience. The child may have no specific goals, maybe just exploring, trying things out, or they have goals that are very specific, but they're their own goals. So they're not doing something to please someone else. But if it's play, one of the criteria for play is that the child is in control. They start it and they lead it. Or sometimes you start it, give them an idea, and then you back off and let the child take the lead. And this is very different than what we used to call problem-solving play, where there was a plan put in place by the educator, and the child was sort of following it out, following it through, but having very little input into it. No. If it's going to be play and going to be beneficial, they have to play on their own terms. And parents can, and educators can play with children, but you're taking a role, playing a role, taking a turn, and they're still in charge. They're the director and the producer. They might let you be an actor. Okay, next slide. Okay, one of the most important types of play experiences is movement. Children need to move their bodies, and the number of minutes a day that children in the early years need is hours of physical active play a day. And if you work with kids, you know that they need this activity and they will find ways to do it. If you don't provide it, then they'll start dancing and singing and jumping. This was actually a little girl who was in grade 2. I was consulting in a school, and I walked by. She was in an empty classroom when everyone else had headed out to lunch, and somehow she'd stayed behind, and she was leaping from one desk to the next desk and not falling. So that was my first fear, but right away I went in and I said, "What are you doing? Come on down." And she looked at me and she says, "Oh, Jan, don't you know I just need to move sometimes?" And I think this is for some kids who are more physical, we have to build that in, and we have to find those really simple ways, like a mini trampoline in the corner where at least they can jump up and down, or anything. Dancing is an amazing movement activity for kids, and they can get very excited about dancing. Okay, I'm going to just say one more thing. If there could only be one toy, let it be a ball. You can do so many things with a ball, and so many games, and so many of them are interactive, and they're just fun. Okay, next slide. Playful experiences that are calming, and don't be hesitant to think that young kids can't calm. They need to practice, they need to learn, they need a quiet, peaceful environment, but they can definitely calm. And if you don't have at least one cozy corner in your childcare center, or even in your home environment, where a child can go and just have that alone time, make some. And you might need 2 or 3 going back after a long break, because you might have a few kids that need to be alone in a cozy corner. It will be important for children to have enough of those cozy corners that only one child will be able to go in. Okay, I'm just going to tell you another quick story, because when I talk about play, all of these kids pop into my head. But I had a friend who had 4 children under 8, and I think it was the 3rd child who was getting ready for kindergarten, and it was very hectic in their kitchen. And she said, I looked down and there he was, all curled up in a ball on the floor. And she said, "What are you doing down there?" And he said, "I'm just trying to get into my happy place so that I can feel calm again." And I think that the power of teaching children how to get calm, it's a gift that's just so valuable, because we really need to work so hard at that. Okay, next slide. Oh, nature play. And I'm sure this is not a surprise to you either. How do we get kids outdoors? And I don't think just getting them outdoors into a concrete playground is enough. I think grass, puddles, leaves, trees are important, and even better, wide open spaces for running. But being outside in nature, it's like it just tones down the energy. The kids who need to move burn off some energy, release some of that stress. The kids who are more slow moving and reflective find something to explore, something to just, like those kids looking at the water, just see how peaceful that experience is. And you can imagine, and then someone will come along and jump in the puddle and make a splash. And then you've got a really wonderful teachable moment. Next slide. We talked a little bit about this yesterday as well, the universal language of movement, music. And I think that whether kids are listening to it quietly for calming, whether they're creating it, and I think that's just so incredible. Little pile of dollar store items in that bottom corner: streamers, scarves, shakers, drums, buckets with drumsticks, just any way that kids can make music. And of course, we talked yesterday as well about just the power of song, of putting some of the concepts that you're trying to share with them about being calm, being caring, being feeling good, deep breathing. Put those in songs. And there are tons of amazing songs on the internet now because people are recognizing the value of teaching these kinds of skills to children in songs. Okay, I'm just going to stop for 1 second. Are we having sound issues or?
Jan, I can hear you. I think
Okay.
maybe just to speak up a little bit might be
Okay.
helpful. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
just to let people know, I can see that there's a lot of questions related to the slides. We will be posting the slides and the recording on our website. So please just visit our website in the next couple of days and it'll all be there.
Okay. So I can certainly try to to speak a little louder. It's not my normal voice, but I do have a louder voice. Anyway, so I just want to say that my granddaughter, she does watch quite a selected amount of educational videos, and she was telling me one day, you know, Grandma, sharing is caring, and I care for you. And so she was kind of singing that really important concept. I used to sing it back to her many times. Next slide. Okay, for children who are already in a calm and engaged state, cognitive play, constructive play, and again, you will see some children that can play for very long periods of time with very focused play, with materials that are open-ended, that don't have a right or wrong way. And even though that little girl is playing with a tower that has a right way to play, there's tons of other things you can do with it. If my 2-year-old grandson were there, it would get to about the 5th cup before he would go now and then just knock it flying all over the room, because the fun for him was the knocking it down. And if you know toddlers, you know that's true. Okay, next slide. Sensory play, again, no rules, lots of relaxation, lots of calming. Next slide. Creativity, same thing. There really isn't a right or a wrong way to be creative. And the just the process of doing and observing, and I watched a little girl once paint an entire piece of paper on the art easel. She was a toddler. She covered every square inch, very calmly, very relaxed. Then she painted the entire easel. This is 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes into the experience. And then she ran out of space on the easel. Then she started painting her arms. And it was at that point that the ECE finally kind of intervened and said, oh, okay, you know what? Like, I think we need to stop before we get too much paint on your clothes. But man, you have been having a wonderful time with that paint, haven't you? And just really commenting on the process rather than the mess to be cleaned up. Okay, the next slide. Okay, so if you're a parent or an educator, just be sure to be invested in the play. A partial player, someone who's playing and also trying to keep track of something on their phone, is very frustrating to a child. So take the time, be invested in the play, have conversations about the play. You know, ask the child, that's really interesting what you're doing, or what gave you that idea? How do you think you feel, or how do you think the character you're playing feels? And, you know, and anytime there seems to be a possible stressor. Remember a little guy trying to set up some little players on a game board, and they were so small that one of them kept falling over. And he just goes, and the ECE looked over to him and she said, oh my gosh, are you getting frustrated? He says, Yes, so frustrated. She said, do you want some help? No, he says, I can do it. Just that validating and reflecting back his emotion was just all he needed to kind of regroup. Next slide. Okay, so if you're invited into the play, you're looking in through a window into the way that a child thinks and feels about herself, other people, and the world. So observe the play, listen to the language, and when needed, take the opportunity to do some emotional literacy development. Oh, when you're dancing, you just look so happy. You've got a big smile on your face and your eyes are excited. Um, oh, oh, you fell. Well, dear, are you okay? Did you get hurt? Are you sad? You need something. And, and the basic feelings, emotions we need, I talked about this a little bit yesterday. There's just four really. After happy, which is good to go, but sad, worried, frustrated, and out and out angry. Then normalize changes in feelings. And I'm going to tell you just another quick story. I hope that the stories are helpful, because every time I talk, I picture, and again, this is my little granddaughter I'm just marveling at her. And she was taking soccer lessons until she wasn't able to anymore. And she says, oh, I was so mad at soccer today. And I said, oh, what happened? She said, somebody took my ball. I said, oh, that's not fun, is it? No, she said, I really like soccer and really it's lots of fun, but I didn't like that and I was mad. But she was able to kind of put the two emotions together and see what had changed her emotion from one state to another. And again, very powerful skills for children to have. And if they have the vocabulary to share them, this is a real gift as well. Next slide. I think I mentioned this earlier. This adult's role is to follow the leader. Join in, connect, and be involved if you're invited. If you get a part, play the part assigned. Admire and be excited about the child's successes. Play is where the child feels competent and feels that they can master challenges. And you want to notice when they do that. You want to say, boy, that was a really hard puzzle. And you stuck with it and you figured it out. And you want to be supportive if the tower falls over. Oh, isn't that just so frustrating? It was getting to be so high and now it's gone. And what are we going to do now? And I think all of those, again, just following the lead, okay, next slide, I think is where I'm going. Okay. And then if we get into pretend and dramatic play, again, we're going to see this just a whole lot of emotional ideas and emotional literacy. Because when a child is playing in dramatic play, they're not only experiencing the emotion, but they're experiencing the idea of an emotion. And then they can put their ideas into words. And if they haven't got the words, they can put it into make-believe play. And that little guy, Buddy, they call this little guy in my house, Buddy has had so many hugs from the time my grandson was able to walk as a older infant and a toddler. He would pick up Buddy, bring him over to me. I would give Buddy a hug. I would give the doll back to him and he would give Buddy a hug. Oh, nice baby. We love him. My granddaughter, a lot of her play came around the time that she started to feel more vulnerable. So Buddy got dropped a lot and got hurt and needed to be picked up and needed his boo-boos kissed. And so what you can see and doll play is amazing play. And we need lots and lots of dolls in childcare. Ideally, I think every child should have a doll that's theirs to look after, to care for, to nurture, to protect, to cherish, to get mad at. And the dolls should have a reasonable amount of materials to go with them. You know, some clothes that'll probably come off, maybe a blanket or a bottle or a spoon. But getting children to play caring for something is just an incredibly powerful, powerful experience. Okay, next slide. Okay, so when you get into pretend play, your roles are even trickier. Lots of times, children who are really, engaged in their pretend play they don't need you to be involved, but they like the audience, and often they will pop out of their play for a minute, maybe to bring you something, share you a cookie they've been baking with their Play-Doh, and then you go back to being part of the audience. A narrator. For some children, you might want to just talk about the play. If you think that there's an emotional lesson that needs to be learned, you can say, oh my goodness, that baby's been lying on her stomach for so long. I wonder if she's happy or if she needs something. So you could throw a suggestion in. You can be a character in the play, but you have to ask the child how to play the role so that you're not interfering with the child's plot line. And I like this idea too, that sometimes you're just the props department. You provide the costumes. And but all of those different roles all tell the child, your play is important to me. I really value what you're doing, and I respect what you're doing. Okay, next slide. Okay, so play, as we mentioned quite a bit earlier on, is that safe place to express those strong feelings. And embedding those strong feelings in play is one way to work them through. So a little guy who's feeling vulnerable and feeling like he doesn't have any competence might come to life when he gets his Superman cape on. He starts to take on a different role and have different feelings about things. This little girl who's sick reminded me of a very interesting play sequence that I experienced with a little girl in childcare who was due to go to the hospital for surgery. And she'd had a previous surgery and she knew what hospitals were, and she did not want to go. And so the ECEs and the mom worked together to kind of embed some really important messages for this little girl, like, while you're away at the hospital, we'll be thinking of you. When you come back, which was another really important message. And they put out a hospital play, and this little girl played in that hospital center every morning for a week and a half, about 2 hours a day. And she started out going, no, this is gonna hurt, this is gonna hurt, no, 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 no. And she was the doctor, this is gonna hurt you. No, you can't have your mommy, no, no, no. And then gradually, oh, yeah, this is gonna hurt, but we're gonna do it real quick, and your mommy's gonna be right here as soon as it's done. And again, some of those ideas came from within, and some of those were suggested to her by the ECEs, who said, you know what, I'm pretty sure that your mommy isn't gonna be very far away when you're in the hospital, and even if you don't see her for a minute or two, she's gonna be right back. And so she came to have some sense of control over that fear of the hospital. Okay, next slide. Okay, this can be tricky when children take the play into an area of that's maybe not that comfortable for you. And sometimes aggressive play or sword fighting or weapons or rough and tumble play, um, we get more uncomfortable with. And we really do kind of need to still let the child take the play in that direction and not kind of judge or criticize or suggest that they're not playing properly, but more ask questions about why the play might be going that way. Why is the other person screaming? You know, what's happening in the game you're playing? What could we do to help her calm down? And sometimes just throwing those out there, not as a criticism, but as an observation and an opportunity to do something is really, really important. And I'm going to tell you again one more quick story. This is a little guy that I was playing with one time, and he was feeling very, his self-esteem was very low. He didn't feel competent. He didn't feel respected. He didn't feel like he ever could win. And I asked him what he wanted to play. And he said what he wanted to play was basketball. We had a basketball hoop. So he started playing basketball, and you know, he was throwing the ball in and he was throwing the ball in and wasn't getting it in, and then he started to get it in. And then as he started to be more successful, he said, "Oh, do you want to play too?" And I said, yes, I'll play too, sure. So I'm deliberately being very incompetent, and I'm missing the basket, and he's getting his in every time. But he's like taking 5 turns, and then he's giving me 1 turn. And then finally he says, "You know what? You better have more turns because you're not doing very well at all. And maybe you can stand closer." And I was just amazed at how once his needs were met through that play, he was then able to connect with me and realize, oh, maybe you have some needs too. And I think that we have to have that trust in children, that if you get that kind of support, that kind of positivity is going to come. Next slide. Okay, so sometimes play is going to open up sensitivities that the child may have. And I think it's so important that we get uncomfortable when our children play out fears about monsters or illness or things that are so sensitive. And again, don't shut down the play, but make sure that you join in it, even if it's just with your presence. And just for people that didn't hear kind of the process of a caring dialogue yesterday, I'm just going to run it down for you. Sorry, I have to find my notes because it's not on the slide. First of all, just be watching and listening and showing that you're being with the child. And if they say something, we know right away, yeah, I understand. Yeah, you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling sad, you're feeling scared. Yeah, it's okay to be scared. And we want to label possible feelings. Sometimes we're guessing. We don't know. And you might be saying, are you feeling scared? Or do you think you're feeling something else? Maybe the child doesn't know. Maybe you don't know how you're feeling, but that's okay. And then the normalizing. Everybody feels that way sometimes. I felt that way last week or this morning. And I think just constantly doing that active listening. And then you know what? There are some things we can do when you're feeling that way. And then you go through some possibilities. Do you want a hug? No, we're not going to be able to offer that when we go back from COVID. Do you want a virtual hug? Do you want to go and get your cuddly? Would you like a drink of water? Would you like to listen to some music or look at a book? And we give the child all different kinds of options to say, even when you're play is concerning and scary, but you're not alone. I'm here, and I'm going to help you to feel better again. Sorry, next slide. Just get a little drink here. So play for children is like talking for adults. It's usually enjoyable. It's almost always meaningful. It's very time consuming. It's how emotional states are expressed. It's helpful in just processing things, time to work things through, and it's best with a caring person. So all of these things children can do alone in play, but with a caring person, it's just that so much better. Okay, next slide. This is a quote that I absolutely love. Otto Weininger, I believe, was from Toronto, and he was a child psychologist, I believe. He wrote a book called Time in Parenting, and he called it a parenting strategy and style for helping children who are experiencing episodes of emotional, behavioral, or developmental stress by staying with them while you resolve the feelings together. And I think that this is my idea of how we self-calm, co-regulate, and support children's mental health through our interactions and definitely through our play with them. Okay, next slide. Are we at the right time for questions? Oh yeah, we are.
Okay, thanks, Jen. I really appreciate learning a lot more about play. We have received a number of questions, so I'll start. We've got a question related to technology and how can parents incorporate play available through technology, like iPad or online games, into the mix for very young children?
I think that's a really important question because technology is going to be the way of kids' future. We can't deny that. So their familiarity with technology is important, but do it together, you know. My granddaughter, she likes to sit on your lap while she watches some of her videos. She loves to try and play a game, even if it's not at her level, just from the fun of pushing the buttons and seeing things explode and fall apart. And I think, again, what I find with technology is that kids get competent so quickly that they feel very powerful using it. So I don't think we want to take that away from them, but be engaged with them. Don't let them take their technology and go away. You know.
Okay, we've had a couple of questions related to rough and tumble play.
Yes.
Yeah, so
favorite topics.
Yeah, so we've got a question from Laura who's saying she comes from an EC background and understands the developmental need for rough and tumble play. She's teaching kindergarten now, and rough and tumble play is not allowed based on the school rules. How can I foster that important developmental need while following school rules?
I think that, okay, one of the things is to advocate with the school that at this age, this is a very important developmental skill. And the reason being that children need to practice stopping and starting their high energy levels. So you might have to do it with things that are like rough and tumble, but not hurtful. And one of the things that I saw that was amazingly funny was a group of kids playing sword fighting with half pool noodles. You know, so they were getting that same sense of the rough and tumble, but they were just bonking each other with pool noodles. And
something soft.
Getting hurt. And, you know, and I think the other thing about rough and tumble play is kids preschool kids especially, but I would say kids of all age, crave physical contact. So you can't really take it away from them. What you need to assure the school and the parents and anybody who's questioning it is, no, I'm supervising it very carefully, and I stop it when children are no longer enjoying it. And we have a place for it where it's kind of contained. So we have our rough and tumble play area, and the other kids know if you go over there, you're taking your chances, because that's where the big muscle play is. But and they all know that as soon as somebody gets upset, the game's over, until they figure out how they're going to change the game. But I think if you kind of substitute big muscle, sometimes you can get away with that without the actual physical contact by putting balls in there. And I'm just going to say this really quickly. My granddaughter, who's in grade 4, plays something called Gaga ball, and it's kind of like dodgeball. It has rules, but you can throw or kick the ball, but if it hits somebody higher than the knees, you're out for a minute or 30 seconds, and then you go back in. So it's not punitive, but it's helping them to get some control over the level of energy, so that, and talk about good for self-regulation. Oh my gosh. Okay,
Gaga ball. Sounds fun.
Play at Gaga ball. Thanks. Okay. Hopefully that helps.
So on that note, just as far as physical activity, you had mentioned that young kids really need hours of physical activity in the day. So Jan, I'm curious as to what advice you might have for parents who might be juggling work at home and managing the household and trying to keep their kids active. You had mentioned the trampoline in the corner. Do you have some other suggestions for people?
My grandkids do a lot of being animals, where they imitate different animals. So they crawl around, or they squirm on the floor like worms or snakes, or they, I think just pretending to be bunnies or frogs. So you can get them moving by doing that kind of creative movement. It's fun to watch them try to be an elephant and swing their trunk as they're walking. The other thing is, I think I mentioned yesterday, like just rolling around on the floor. Another thing that my kids like to do, and some parents may not be comfortable with this, is they take all the cushions off the couch and then climb up the back of the couch and jump onto the cushions, onto the floor. And nobody gets hurt because it's pretty safe, and they don't hurt the cushions either. And it's a really fun, self-controlled way to put some of that. And again, I'm going to say dance. Put something like, what does the fox say on your phone, and watch the kids try to dancing and imitating dance movements of people on TV. It's incredible.
Okay, great. Okay. Thank you. So we were talking a lot today about play, and you had suggested that adults really take their cue from their kids and really accept the direction that the child takes. We had talked about, so if the adult is feeling uncomfortable with the direction that the play is going, let's say that it's in relation to the pandemic. We don't know how it's going to turn out. And so do you have some advice for a parent who might be looking to reassure their child, but also letting the child direct the play, and they might not be feeling very good about the direction that the play is going in, and certainly don't know the answers as to how the pandemic will end up?
Yeah, I think, again, the hospital kind of play, the real objects kind of play, like have some masks, and have the kids, take their masks on and off, and just say, there's my little granddaughter, again, who's 3, can say, there's a sickness, Grandma, and that's why I can't hug you. I can do this instead. And I think always when you're taking something away from a child, like you have to put something else in instead, replace it with something, but let them be doctors. Let them talk about healthcare and nurses and caring for, and oh my goodness, if you're going to look after that puppy, you better put your mask on just in case you're giving them germs. So that, again, that they can get that sense of understanding and control over the situation rather than feeling, kind of vulnerable in it. And if you're going to the, even if they're play shopping, oh, don't forget to wash your hands. Don't forget to wash your hands. And, but it's really hard. But I think using play is probably the best way. And there are some new storybooks out there that you can find and read to your kids about explaining COVID at a very basic level.
And in fact, Jan, you had shared a storybook with the Psychology Foundation of Canada, and we posted that on our website. It was a very well done, illustrated, short book that explains a little bit about what's going on with COVID to young children. So I'd encourage people to take a look on our website for that.
Yeah.
Thanks again for sharing that.
My colleague always says that a book really has like such a power to validate things that children might be experiencing or feeling, because right away they say, oh, it's not just me. So I think
reminds me of when you had mentioned yesterday as well, as far as taking that time to read with your young child is also that opportunity to connect. So if it's a 15 minutes of connecting, so the content might be one piece, but it's really being able to share those moments together.
Yeah. And start singing Miss Polly Had Her Dolly. Do you know that one?
I do know that one. Yeah. From the Early Years Center. Okay.
Okay.
We've got time for a couple more questions. Here's a question, Jan. Does having too many toys to play with harm a child's imagination and play?
Yes and no. I think too many all out at once can just lead to chaos. Lots of options to choose from, I think, are good. I know when you look at that big pile of toys on my floor, probably wondering how come they've got so much. But I think that it's really important to sort of sort them and organize them and only have a few out at a time, because definitely the play theory is that they will be much more creative if they have to make something out of something they don't have, So, but I don't know. It depends. They have some kids have very short attention spans and they move fairly quickly. So you want to have, a variety to kind of catch the mood. And other kids go back to the same ones over and over. I don't think there's a right or a wrong to that question.
Okay, and a question related to organized play. So recognizing that for some kids, their extracurricular, their dance and their soccer will have been interrupted. And this is a very important aspect of play. So what kinds of strategies might you suggest for replacing these experiences or help the child's emotions of not being able to attend those activities?
I think there are lots of opportunities to kind of do these kinds of things online. So you might be able to join a dance club that's online. You might, if you have anything like Facebook or Zoom, you might just organize, a couple playmates to go on and be on together and have some kids. And kids are very competent at interacting through the computers. And I think do it with them. I had I'm going to end with just one quick story. Again, I had some bubble wrap taped to my front hall for my kids to stomp through. And my granddaughter was doing it. And I was watching her and she says, no, come on, Grandma, your turn. So every time she did it, your turn too. Like they want that when they're doing something like that, they want to feel like you're participating, that you're not just an audience. So anything that you or the whole family could do a dance class, just recreate them the best you can and reassure them that they'll be back at some point.
That's right. That reassurance, so important. It's funny you mentioned the bubble tape. Actually, that's one of my stress strategies. I love popping
Yeah.
those bubbles.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's fun for children and adults alike.
All righty.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jan. I think this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciated over the last 2 days all the information that you've shared. And I hope you'll join us again for a future webinar.
Now that we have the kinks out, I might.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. For sure I will. Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
We can only improve, right? Yeah.
Thanks.
And thank you everyone for joining us today. We didn't get to everyone's questions, but we'll certainly do our very best to answer them. As I'd mentioned, the recording and the slides will be available on our website along with all kinds of other information. So I'd encourage you to check it out. And I just wanted to remind you that as a charity, we are reliant on donations. So if it's within your means and you're able to make a donation, it'll allow us to continue to offer this kind of information to you. So thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you again here next week. Have a great day.
All righty. Go play.
Go play.